Now to my exclusive interview with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, who this morning spoke a second time with President Trump. President Zelenskyy, thank you so much for joining the Sunday briefing. I want to get your reaction to this peace deal that we're seeing unfold in Gaza. We are watching scenes of celebration that a short while ago seemed impossible, and very soon we're going to see the hostages come home. Does seeing this deal reached between Israel and Hamas give you renewed hope that President Trump can achieve a similar outcome for Ukraine?
I just had a conversation a phone call with President Trump. I congratulated him. This is real success. This is so important. And this is what people will come back home. And so important that ceasefire between us, ceasefire, it's big, huge step to peace deal. That's why I think this is real success. And of course, it gives signals for us and hope that with such pressure, what President Trump used in Middle East to make peace, and I hope that he will use the same instruments, even more, to pressure Putin to stop his war in Ukraine. I hope so, and I spoke about it with President.
Yeah, tell me about that phone call that you had with President Trump. What did he say about either Gaza or the war in Ukraine? What's coming next? Tell me about your conversation.
No, he said really that in Ukraine it's more difficult and it's a bigger war. Putin really doesn't want, and he doesn't feel full pressure on him. For example, like Americans with partners, what they did in what they did, like with the Iranians and with Iran. We need two things, I think, to make real pressure on Putin. I said to him that we need real air defense, and the second point, to have long distance capabilities. They produce Iranian drones. They produce thousands of them, and they use for one day, during one day, they use 500 plus Iranian drones. And that's the same North Korean they did with artillery. So it's difficult for Ukraine. Yes, we are not, we are a strong country, but not so big. To be against Russia and the Iranians and North Koreans is too much. That's why we spoke about tomahawks and other things.
Did he approve the tomahawks?
We work on it,
okay.
And I'm waiting from President. Yes, we of course we count on such decisions, but we will see.
Okay.
We will see.
Part of President Trump's achievement brokering this peace deal with Gaza, in Gaza rather, between Israel and Hamas, involved pressuring both sides and a threat of real destruction to Hamas if they did not agree. Hamas knew that threat was real. But Russia is a nuclear power. So what can President Trump do in the case of Ukraine to make a difference like it did with Hamas? What are those fine points that will turn the tide of this war?
We don't imagine that Russia can use nuclear weapons. Otherwise, we need the new planet. So, I mean, this is crazy decisions. But there are things which are very painful for aggressor, in this case, for Russia, and for everybody. When countries, strong countries like United States, European countries, Canada, Japan, when they use such instruments as sanctions or tariffs, it really has influence on domestic questions. So we need strong sanctions on Russia. This is number one. The second point, when we have private sector from different countries, even in Europe, even our close partners, I mean this, and private sectors they buy energy, it's not right. And with these points, I agree with President Trump. I'm on his side that Europe has to stop to buy any kind of energy from Russia.
Yeah, how close are we to that happening? Because the president said he would do these secondary sanctions, but first, NATO countries and the EU have got to get off Russian oil. How soon could we see that happen?
I heard it. So we speak with Europe. We are thankful to Europe because of their 19th package. If United States will make in parallel way decisions. Secondary sanctions, very painful for Russia. Everybody understands it. It depends on President Trump will. And I agree with President. I'm asking him to put this, to support this package of secondary sanctions, and of course, not to connect it with European decisions. But I agree that Europe has to stop to buy. And by the way, Europe made big progress. I spoke with a lot of leaders, and really, Europe decreased 80% of their contracts on energy during all this period of war. But it's not enough. I agree with Americans, and it's not enough. The question with Slovak and Hungarians, and I think that we can do it from our side. We spoke with Slovak, and with Hungarians it's more difficult. We don't speak with them, but President Trump can speak with Hungarians and the pressure on him. But with Slovak, we can find alternatives.
I want to ask you about the Tomahawks and long-range missiles, but I have a few other questions on another topic first. On Friday, the First Lady, Melania Trump, announced that she's had an open line of communication with Vladimir Putin to facilitate the return of Ukrainian children who are now in Russia. How many children, Ukrainian children, does Russia have? And how soon could we see more coming home?
The minimum what we know that 19,000, about 19, maybe more, but 19,000 we understand been stolen by Russia. 19,000 of children. Then 1,600 we already brought to Ukraine. Yeah, we have the program Bring Kids Back. We have 40 countries who are in this coalition of helping to bring back children. I'm thankful to President Trump, and I'm thankful to First Lady that they have contact with the First Lady of Ukraine, and for this step. So we're very thankful. If First Lady of the United States, she will continue this work. And I understand that there are a lot of challenges in the United States, but God bless. I think this topic is also will be in focus of First Lady and of the United States.
It's nice to hear some good news every once in a while. I also want to ask about the Nobel Peace Prize. You have personally witnessed President Trump's commitment to brokering peace across the world. You've seen the kind of pressure that he applies to get it done. Sometimes you've been on the receiving end of that pressure. This year's Nobel Peace Prize went to Venezuela's opposition leader. What was your reaction to that? Do you think that President Trump should be nominated next year? Would you do it?
I think that we will be very happy to nominate President Trump next year, Nobel Prize, if he will, because only him for today, only him can. So if he will pressure and stop Putin, if he will put Putin at the table of dialogue, negotiations, if President Trump will stop these killings, and I think that ceasefire, sometimes we understand that ceasefire is not, it's not really finishing the war, but between us, we understand that ceasefire, this is the biggest step to the final, to finish the war. But if he will do it, I hope so, and God bless that he can do it. Of course, in this case, we will nominate him, and we will be proud to congratulate him.
Wonderful. I also want to ask you about these long-range missiles. Last month, President Trump said that Russia's military is a paper tiger. He said that Ukraine is positioned to win back all of its territory, and he's been considering giving these Tomahawks to Ukraine, giving Ukraine access to the Tomahawks. He said, though, first he would want to know what Ukraine would hit with those missiles. Have you told the president what kinds of targets Ukraine would want to hit? And has he made any indication that an answer will come soon?
Yes, so it's only military goals, only military. We never, even with all, with all this pain of losses of our families and our soldiers and our civilians and children, even with all this pain, but our people, we never attacked their civilians. This is the big difference between Ukraine and Russia. That's why if we speak about long range, we speak only about military goals. That's it.
On the long-range strikes, the president recently signed off on plans to share intelligence to facilitate Ukraine's ability to conduct those long-range strikes into Russia. But according to some reports, U.S. officials were waiting on written instructions from the White House to begin sharing that intelligence. Has that happened yet?
I can't share, sorry, Jackie, I can't share everything about intelligence with you. With pleasure, but I can't. So
said another way, are you comfortable where things are right now?
Now we are comfortable how our two intelligences, our two institutions work. They have very strong relations for today.
Okay. And Russia and Ukraine have been exchanging strikes on energy infrastructure. What is the situation like on the battlefield, and what are your concerns heading into this winter?
This is what I shared when I was in Washington with President. I said to him, when Russia tries to sell you, Mr. President, that they can, and they are such strong that they can occupy East, you will see closer to winter when they will not do it because they are not so strong as they speak. On the battlefield, they are not, there is no success. And there is no any kind of victory, but that's why they're trying to push this, really energy terror. For example, just Jackie, the last example, they attacked at night our region, Odessa. I don't know if you know. I think you know Odessa region. Yeah. So and Odessa, and they destroyed all the electricity. Of course, electricity will be renovated during these days.
I want to ask you about Ukraine's innovation, because you've made some pretty impressive advances with your anti-drone air defense technology. How effective is this new technology if you had to give it a percentage rate? So
this is drone is cheapest, by the way, cheapest way how to destroy Iranian drones. They now, the percent of destroying is 68.
Wow.
So, I mean, this, you understand, 68% of successful destroying. But the problem that you need thousands of them. Right. According to, for example, 500-600 of Shaheeds each day. It means that you need 1,000 of such interceptors. And we don't have for today enough money to put for private productions, private companies to increase their production. So this is one problem, but I think that we will manage it. Finally,
we can end here, but I want to ask about these recent Russian drone and jet incursions into NATO airspace. It's been ramping up. Where do you think Putin is going with this war?
The first point, he wanted to see a real reaction of Europe, and I think that it was not loud enough, and he didn't see a real reaction. The second point, not political, very practical, that he saw what air defense capabilities, how Europe is ready for one or another attack.
You see these as a test, then?
I think, yes, it was a test. And he saw, so he looked at Nordic countries, he looked at the reaction of Poland, and they destroyed 20%. And just to remind to everybody, and I said it to Europeans, look at this situation. He made the same with Crimea. That's why I said, I think this is the most dangerous reason, if I'm right, that he's testing and preparing his society.
History is the most important teacher. We'll have to leave it there. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, thank you so much for joining the Sunday briefing. We hope to have you back again soon, sir.
Thank you so much, Jackie. All the best. God bless you.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.